I grew up in a modest neighborhood in southern Italy, a place where cobblestone streets wove through rows of pastel-colored houses. Life was simple and predictable. My parents worked tirelessly, my father as a carpenter and my mother as a seamstress, their hands marked by years of dedication and love. Faith was present in our home, but in a quiet, understated way. We attended church on major holidays, lit candles for the saints, and whispered prayers before meals. For us, these were more rituals than moments of genuine connection, a way to honor tradition rather than nurture a living faith. As a child, I was curious and playful, finding joy in the smallest things. The way the sunlight danced on the waves of the nearby sea, the scent of freshly baked bread wafting through the village square, the laughter of friends echoing as we played soccer until dusk. My family instilled in me values of hard work, respect, and kindness. Yet spirituality remained an untouched mystery, sitting quietly in the background of my life. Adulthood brought its own set of challenges and responsibilities. By the time I reached my 30s, I had built what many would call a good life. I worked as a school teacher, helping young minds grasp the intricacies of language and mathematics. I married Claudia, the love of my life, and together we raised two beautiful children, Luca and Sophia. Our days were filled with the hum of routine, packing lunches, school drop-offs, soccer games on weekends, and family dinners where laughter mingled with the clinking of plates. Yet, despite this seemingly idyllic life, I often felt a quiet discontent, a nagging void that I couldn't quite explain. It wasn't unhappiness. I loved my family deeply and found joy in the small moments we shared. But there was a sense of restlessness, a question that lingered in the recesses of my mind. Is this all there is? Faith, or rather the lack of it, offered no answers. The Jesus I had heard about as a child felt distant, more a historical figure than a living presence. One late Friday evening, as the world around me slowed down after a busy week, I found myself driving through the quiet streets of our village. The stars were hidden behind a blanket of clouds, and the soft hum of the car engine was the only sound accompanying me. I was heading home after a long day of work, planning to surprise Claudia with her favorite pastries from the corner bakery. My mind wandered to the weekend ahead, filled with the familiar rhythm of chores and family time. As I reached for the radio dial, searching for a station that might play something other than static, a sudden flash of headlights in my rearview mirror pulled me back to reality. The car behind me was speeding, weaving recklessly between lanes. A surge of annoyance flickered through me as I slowed slightly, hoping to let the driver pass. But instead of overtaking me, the vehicle veered closer, its headlights glaring in an almost menacing way. My heart began to race as I gripped the steering wheel tighter, a sense of unease settling in my chest. Before I could react, the speeding car swerved abruptly and clipped my rear bumper. The world seemed to tilt in that instant. My car spun out of control, the screeching of tires on asphalt mingling with the deafening crunch of metal. Time seemed to slow as the vehicle slammed into the concrete barrier lining the road. The impact sent a shudder through my body, like a giant fist had struck me with unimaginable force. And then there was silence, a heavy, all-encompassing silence that seemed to swallow the world whole. My vision blurred, and for a brief moment, I was aware of the stillness. No sound, no movement, just an eerie quiet that filled every corner of my being. It felt as though the weight of the universe had pressed pause, leaving me suspended in that single, breathless moment. I don't remember the exact second when my consciousness began to fade. It was as though I was being gently pulled into a deep, dark ocean, the world above growing more distant with every passing second. My last coherent thought was of Claudia and the children. Their faces flickered in my mind like snapshots, fragments of a life I feared I might be leaving behind. As my awareness dimmed, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. It was a strange sensation, like being enveloped in a warm, protective cocoon. The fear and panic that had gripped me moments earlier dissolved, replaced by an indescribable peace. And then, everything went black. If you've made it this far, thank you for being part of this journey. Our community thrives on stories that connect, inspire, and uplift. If you'd like to continue exploring this incredible experience, don't forget to subscribe and join our growing community. And if this story has resonated with you so far, consider giving this video a like. It helps us reach more hearts with messages of hope and faith. I don't remember the exact instant my consciousness slipped away. It was as though I'd been unmoored from the physical world, drifting into an endless expanse of darkness. Yet this darkness wasn't frightening or oppressive. It carried an unexpected sense of calm, as if I were cradled in the void itself. My thoughts floated free, unbound by the limits of time or space. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or if something far more profound was unfolding. The stillness was profound, almost tangible, like the pause between one breath and the next. And then, from the depths of the void, a faint glimmer emerged. At first, it was no more than a pinprick of light, distant and fragile against the expanse of darkness. Yet, as I watched, it began to grow, drawing nearer and filling the space around me with a gentle, ethereal glow. I felt myself moving toward the light, though I wasn't walking in the traditional sense. It was as if I were being carried, drawn forward by an unseen force. The sensation was strange, but not unpleasant, like floating on a gentle current. As the light grew brighter, I became aware of a warmth radiating from it. Not a physical warmth, but something deeper, a soothing presence that seemed to seep into the very fabric of my being. When I finally reached the light, it enveloped me completely. It wasn't blinding or harsh, but soft and welcoming, like the first rays of morning sunlight breaking through the night. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, a tranquility that went beyond anything I had ever experienced in my earthly life. It was as though every burden, every worry, every ounce of pain had been lifted, leaving me weightless and free. As I stood in the light, I began to notice shapes forming within it. At first, they were vague and indistinct, like shadows on the edge of my vision. But slowly, they began to take on clarity and form. The first thing I saw was a vast expanse of what I can only describe as a celestial landscape. It was breathtakingly beautiful, with colors that seemed to shimmer and shift, defying the boundaries of earthly perception. The ground beneath my feet was like a field of glass, clear and reflective, yet somehow alive with energy. Above me stretched a sky that was neither day nor night, painted with hues of gold and silver that seemed to pulse in rhythm with some unseen force. And in the distance, I saw what appeared to be a great, luminous city, its towers and spires glowing with a light that seemed to emanate from within. I was awestruck, overwhelmed by the sheer majesty of what I was witnessing. Every part of this place felt alive, infused with a divine essence that was both humbling and uplifting. I knew, deep within my soul, that this was no ordinary place. I was standing on holy ground, in the presence of something far greater than myself. And then, amidst the splendor of the celestial landscape, a figure appeared. At first, it was little more than a silhouette, outlined against the brilliance of the light. But as it drew closer, its features became clearer. It was a man, yet unlike any man I had ever seen. His presence was both commanding and compassionate, radiating a love so pure and profound that it brought tears to my eyes. Though I had never seen him before, I knew instantly who he was. There was no doubt in my mind or heart. It was Jesus. His face was radiant, his eyes filled with a tenderness and understanding that seemed to pierce through every barrier. He looked at me, and in that moment, I felt fully known. Every thought, every fear, every part of me laid bare. Yet there was no judgment in his gaze, only love and a deep, abiding compassion. Jesus didn't speak at first, but his presence alone spoke volumes. It was as if his very existence conveyed truths that words could never capture. I felt an overwhelming sense of belonging, of being exactly where I was meant to be. And then, when he did speak, his voice was like a melody, resonating not just in my ears, but in the very core of my being. "My child," he said, his tone both gentle and firm, "I have brought you here because there is something you must see, something you must understand." As he spoke, the celestial landscape around us began to shift. The radiant city in the distance faded, replaced by scenes from the earthly realm. It was as though a curtain had been drawn back, revealing a hidden layer of reality. I saw people, ordinary men and women, going about their lives. But overlaid on their daily activities was something extraordinary, a spiritual realm teeming with activity. There were angels, their forms radiant and majestic, standing watch over certain individuals. Their presence was protective, their gaze unwavering. And then there were other entities, darker and more menacing, lurking in the shadows. These beings moved with an unsettling precision, their focus intent on influencing and ensnaring the people around them. The scenes were vivid and unrelenting, each one revealing a battle that was invisible to the human eye, but no less real. I saw moments of triumph, where light overcame darkness, and moments of heartbreak, where individuals succumbed to the weight of their struggles. It was a stark reminder of the unseen war being waged for the souls of humanity. As I watched, Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder. The touch was both grounding and empowering, filling me with a sense of purpose. "You must tell them," he said, his voice resonating with urgency. "Tell them what you have seen. Help them to understand the times in which they live and the choices that lie before them." His words echoed in my mind as the vision began to fade. The celestial landscape dissolved, and I felt myself being drawn back toward the darkness. But this time, the darkness was different. It wasn't an absence of light, but a place of transition, a moment between worlds. As the darkness enveloped me once more, it carried with it a curious sense of weightlessness, as if I were floating on an unseen tide. But this was no ordinary darkness. It was alive with an energy that was neither threatening nor comforting. It simply was. Somewhere in the distance, a faint glow emerged, piercing the shadows like a single star in a moonless sky. The glow grew steadily, and with it came a hum, a vibration that resonated not in my ears, but within my very being. Drawn toward the light, I felt as if my soul was being unburdened, layer by layer, as if all the fears, doubts, and regrets that had weighed me down in life were being peeled away. The light grew closer, and with it came a profound realization. I was no longer bound by the constraints of the physical world. My senses were heightened, yet transformed. I could see without eyes, hear without ears, and feel without touch. Every part of me was attuned to something greater, something divine. As I approached the source of the light, it unfolded before me like a veil being lifted from a hidden masterpiece. What I saw defied earthly comprehension. There was a vast expanse, a realm of unimaginable beauty and harmony. Colors I had no names for danced across the horizon, shimmering and shifting as though they were alive. The air itself seemed to hum with a celestial melody, each note resonating with the essence of creation. In the center of this ethereal realm stood a figure, a presence so radiant that it seemed to embody the very essence of the light itself. Though I could not fully comprehend its form, I knew without a doubt who it was. It was Jesus. His presence was overwhelming, yet deeply reassuring, like the embrace of a long-lost friend. His gaze met mine, and in that instant, I felt a flood of emotions. Awe, humility, and a love so pure it brought tears to my eyes. "You have been brought here for a reason," he said, his voice resonating not as sound, but as a vibration that filled every corner of my soul. "There is much you must see and understand." As he spoke, the luminous realm around us began to shift. It was as if a curtain of light had been drawn back, revealing a deeper reality hidden beneath the surface. Before me stretched a vast landscape, one that mirrored the world I had known, but was layered with something far more profound. Over every scene, a bustling marketplace, a quiet home, a crowded city street, lay a spiritual dimension teeming with activity. Angels, their forms radiant and majestic, moved among the people, their presence protective and guiding. Their light was pure and unwavering, a stark contrast to the darker figures that skulked in the shadows. These darker entities were twisted and grotesque, their movements deliberate and sinister. They whispered lies into the ears of the unsuspecting, sowing seeds of doubt, fear, and anger. The contrast between the light and the dark was striking, a constant reminder of the battle being waged for the souls of humanity. As I watched, my attention was drawn to a peculiar detail. In the hands of many people, I saw faint marks, lines that seemed to glow faintly, forming shapes and symbols. Some bore marks that radiated with a soft, golden light, while others had marks that pulsed with a dark, ominous energy. I felt a deep unease as I realized that these marks were not random. They represented choices, allegiances, and the unseen bonds that tied each individual to forces they might not even be aware of. These marks are not of the flesh, Jesus explained, but of the spirit. They reflect the state of each person's soul, the paths they have chosen, and the battles they face. Some are marked by my grace, while others bear the weight of deception. His words filled me with a sense of urgency. I thought of my own life, of the moments when I had been swayed by doubt, fear, and the temptations of the world. How often had I allowed my faith to waver, succumbing to the pressures of daily life? The realization was humbling, a stark reminder of the fragility of the human spirit. As I stood there, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I was witnessing, Jesus reached out his hand and touched my shoulder. The gesture was simple, yet it carried with it a profound sense of reassurance and strength. "You are not here to dwell on your failures," he said. "You are here to learn, to understand, and to carry this message to others." The scenes before me began to shift once more, moving faster now, like pages of a book being turned in rapid succession. I saw glimpses of lives transformed by faith, of individuals finding strength and purpose in the light of Christ. I also saw moments of heartbreak, where the darkness seemed to prevail, leaving scars that ran deep. Each scene was a testament to the power of choice, the eternal struggle between light and darkness that played out in the heart of every soul. And then the vision paused. Before me was an image that seemed to capture the essence of the message I was being shown. It was a pair of hands, outstretched and open. In one palm was the faint outline of a cross, glowing with a golden light. In the other was a dark, jagged mark, its edges sharp and menacing. The hands trembled, as if caught in the midst of a decision that would shape their destiny. Jesus' voice broke the silence. "The choice is theirs," he said, "but they cannot choose what they do not understand. That is why you must go back. Tell them what you have seen, show them the truth, and help them find the light within their own hearts." As his words settled in my soul, the vision began to fade. The radiant realm dissolved into the darkness once more, leaving me with a sense of longing and purpose that I could not put into words. The darkness had become a familiar companion, but this time it carried a new weight, a weight of responsibility and understanding. I was being drawn back to the ethereal realm, but now with a heightened awareness of the stakes at hand. The images I had seen, the marks on the hands, the interplay of light and darkness, all burned vividly in my mind. It was as if the veil had been permanently lifted, and there was no going back to ignorance. As the glow returned, Jesus' presence came into focus once more. His gaze was steady, filled with compassion, yet carrying an unmistakable urgency. He stood at the edge of what seemed to be a great expanse, a place where the boundaries of heaven and earth blurred into one. Beyond him, I could see countless figures, radiant and serene, standing as though they were waiting, watching, and preparing for something of great importance. "What you have seen is but a glimpse," Jesus said, his voice resonating with a power that seemed to echo across the expanse. "But the time is short, and there is much to do. The battle for souls is intensifying, and many are still blind to the truth. They live unaware of the choices they make every day, choices that shape their eternity." As he spoke, the celestial landscape around us began to shift again. I saw the familiar scenes of daily life. Families sharing meals, workers toiling in their fields, children laughing and playing. Yet, overlaid on these ordinary moments was the spiritual realm, alive with activity. Angels stood guard over some, their light illuminating paths of hope and righteousness. But others walked with shadows clinging to them, their steps heavy with unseen burdens. The contrast was stark and heartbreaking. Jesus turned to me, his expression filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "My child, the marks you saw are not imposed by force. They are chosen. Every thought, every action, every word spoken in love or hatred leaves its mark. Many do not realize the power they hold to align themselves with light or darkness. That is why you must speak, share what you have witnessed, and help them see that every moment is an opportunity to choose me." His words struck me deeply. I thought of my own life, of the countless times I had allowed fear, pride, or indifference to guide my actions. I felt a pang of regret, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of hope. If I could change, if I could align my heart with his light, then others could too. It was not too late, for me or for anyone willing to listen. As if sensing my thoughts, Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. The gesture was both grounding and empowering, a reminder that I was not alone in this mission. "Do not be afraid," he said. "You are not called to save the world. That is my work. You are called to be a witness, to shine my light in places of darkness. Trust in me, and I will guide your steps." The scene shifted once more, and I found myself standing before a vast assembly of people. They were from every nation, every tribe, every walk of life. Some looked weary and broken, their faces etched with the struggles of a lifetime. Others radiated a quiet strength, their eyes filled with hope and determination. As I stood there, I felt the weight of their gaze, their unspoken questions pressing upon me. Jesus spoke again, his voice carrying a clarity that cut through the noise of my thoughts. "These are the ones you will reach. Some will hear your words and turn to the light. Others will resist, their hearts hardened by the lies they have believed. But do not lose heart. Every seed you plant matters, even if you do not see it grow." His words were a balm to my soul, a reminder that my role was not to measure success by earthly standards, but to be faithful in the task he had given me. As I looked at the assembly, I felt a surge of love for them, a love that I knew was not my own, but a reflection of his boundless compassion. The vision began to fade, and I felt myself being drawn back, the celestial light giving way to the familiar darkness. But this time, the darkness was not a void. It was a place of transition, a moment of preparation before returning to the world I had known. As I drifted, Jesus' final words echoed in my heart. "Go, and let your life be a testimony. Speak the truth in love, and trust that I am with you always." If this chapter has touched your heart, I invite you to take a moment to like this video and share your blessing by commenting AMM below. Let us continue to grow this community of faith, hope, and love, shining the light of truth together. The transition back was unlike anything I had ever imagined. It was as though the very fabric of my being was being rewoven, thread by thread, into the tapestry of the physical world. The peace and warmth of the celestial realm still lingered, like a faint glow on the horizon, but I could feel the weight of my body returning. Each sensation was sharp and vivid. The ache in my chest, the dull throb in my head, the chill of the night air against my skin. I opened my eyes to chaos. The wreckage of my car surrounded me, its twisted metal frame a haunting reminder of the crash. Shattered glass glinted in the dim light of the street lamps, and the acrid smell of gasoline and burnt rubber filled the air. The distant wail of sirens pierced the silence, growing louder with each passing second. My vision blurred as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. For a moment, I wondered if it had all been a dream, a figment of my imagination brought on by the trauma of the accident. But then, as I lay there, I felt it, a presence unmistakable and comforting. It was as if the very essence of the encounter with Jesus had been imprinted on my soul, a divine assurance that I was not alone. I tried to move, but pain shot through my body, sharp and unrelenting. I could hear voices now, muffled but urgent, calling out instructions and questions. Hands reached out to me, steady and strong, and I realized that help had arrived. The paramedics worked swiftly, their movements precise and practiced. As they lifted me onto a stretcher, I caught a glimpse of the night sky above. It was clear and vast, dotted with stars that seemed to shimmer with a newfound brilliance. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for being alive, but for the clarity and purpose that had been revealed to me. The ride to the hospital was a blur of flashing lights and hushed voices. Pain ebbed and flowed, but it was secondary to the thoughts racing through my mind. The visions I had seen, the words Jesus had spoken, the weight of the message I was tasked to carry. It all felt as real and urgent as the pulse that beat steadily in my chest. I knew that my life had been irrevocably changed, that the path before me was no longer the same as the one I had walked before. Recovery was slow and arduous. My injuries, though not life-threatening, were a constant reminder of the fragility of the human body. I spent weeks in the hospital, my days filled with a mix of physical therapy, quiet reflection, and moments of prayer. It was during this time that I began to truly process the enormity of what I had experienced. The memories of the celestial realm were as vivid as ever, each detail etched into my mind with perfect clarity. At first, I hesitated to share my story. How could I put into words something so profound, so otherworldly? I feared skepticism and ridicule, the possibility that others might dismiss my experience as nothing more than a hallucination or a fanciful tale. But then, I remembered Jesus' words, "Go, and let your life be a testimony. Speak the truth in love, and trust that I am with you always." With time, the hesitation gave way to determination. I began by sharing my story with those closest to me, my wife, Claudia, and our children, Luca and Sophia. Their reactions were a mix of astonishment and reverence, their eyes wide with wonder as I recounted every detail. Claudia, ever the pillar of strength in our family, took my hand and said, "If this is the path God has chosen for you, then we will walk it together." Her words filled me with a sense of courage and conviction that I had not felt before. From there, the circle widened. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers became the audience for my testimony. Each time I spoke, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, as if the very act of sharing was part of the mission Jesus had entrusted to me. The responses varied. Some listened with rapt attention, their faces reflecting a mix of awe and curiosity. Others were more skeptical, their questions tinged with doubt. But even in those moments, I felt no discouragement. I knew that the seeds were being planted, even if the harvest was not mine to witness. As the weeks turned into months, the message began to take shape, its core rooted in the truths I had seen and heard. It was a message of hope and warning, of light and darkness, of choices that carried eternal consequences. I spoke of the marks on the hands, the battle for souls, and the love of a Savior who stood ready to redeem and restore. Each word was a testament to the grace and mercy that had been extended to me, a grace I knew was available to all who sought it. And so, my journey continued, marked by moments of both struggle and triumph. The world around me was the same, yet I saw it through a different lens, a lens sharpened by the knowledge of the spiritual realities that lay beneath the surface. Every interaction, every decision, every prayer became an opportunity to align my life with the mission I had been given. If this story has moved you, I invite you to be part of something greater. Take a moment to like this video, and if you feel led, comment AMM below to share your blessing. Together, as a community of faith, we can shine a light that reaches far beyond what we can see. The weeks that followed my recovery were unlike any I had ever known. Everything felt different, sharper, more vibrant, yet also tinged with a sense of gravity. It was as if the veil between the physical and the spiritual had been permanently thinned, and I could no longer look at the world the same way. Ordinary moments. The laughter of my children, the warmth of Claudia's hand in mine, the sound of the wind rustling through the olive trees, took on a new, profound significance. Every breath felt like a gift, every heartbeat a reminder of the grace that had spared me. But along with this heightened awareness came a responsibility that weighed heavily on my soul. I could not shake the urgency of Jesus' words or the vivid images of the marks, the battle for souls, and the unseen forces at work. The world, with all its beauty and complexity, was also a battlefield, and every choice carried eternal significance. This realization brought both clarity and a sense of urgency to my days. I began to notice things I had overlooked before: the despair hidden behind a neighbor's polite smile, the quiet longing in a colleague's eyes, the way people clung to distractions to avoid confronting the emptiness within. It was as though a spotlight had been turned on, illuminating the spiritual hunger and battles that surrounded me. I realized that the mission Jesus had given me was not just about grand gestures or public declarations, but about meeting people where they were in the midst of their struggles and questions. One day, as I walked through the village square, I passed a small chapel I had rarely noticed before. Its weathered stone walls and simple wooden door seemed to beckon me, and I felt a pull to step inside. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of candles and incense. Sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows, casting vibrant patterns on the floor. I knelt at one of the pews, my heart heavy with the weight of my mission. "Lord," I whispered, "I am willing, but I do not know where to begin. Show me the way." As I sat in the silence, a sense of peace washed over me. It wasn't an answer in words, but a quiet assurance that I was not alone. The path would unfold in its own time, and my task was simply to remain faithful and open. I left the chapel with a renewed sense of purpose, my steps lighter and my heart steadier. Opportunities to share my testimony began to present themselves in unexpected ways. A conversation with a curious shopkeeper, a chance encounter with an old friend, a question from a stranger about the scars on my arm. Each moment felt divinely orchestrated, a reminder that God was guiding my steps. I spoke not with the polished eloquence of a preacher, but with the raw honesty of someone who had been forever changed. The words flowed naturally, carrying the truth of what I had seen and felt. People listened, some with tears in their eyes, others with quiet nods of understanding. There were moments of doubt, of course, questions that I could not fully answer, skepticism that I could not erase. But even in those moments, I felt a quiet confidence that the seeds were being planted and that the harvest was in God's hands. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, I sat with Claudia on our porch. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the breeze. I turned to her and said, "I feel like we've been given a second chance. Not just me, but us as a family. There is so much work to do, so many people who need to hear this message." Claudia took my hand and smiled, her eyes reflecting the same sense of purpose I felt. "Then we'll do it together," she said. "Whatever it takes." Her words were a balm to my soul, a reminder that I was not walking this path alone. Together, we began to dream of ways to reach others, to share the hope and light that had transformed our lives. We started small, inviting neighbors for coffee and heartfelt conversations, organizing prayer meetings, and offering a listening ear to those who felt lost or burdened. Each step felt like a small ripple in a vast ocean, but we trusted that God would use even the smallest acts of faith to accomplish His purposes. The journey was not without challenges. There were moments of exhaustion, of doubt, of feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task. But in those moments, I would return to the memories of that celestial realm, of Jesus' gaze, of His words that had been etched into my soul. They were a constant source of strength, a reminder that the mission was not mine alone but His, and that He would equip me for every step of the journey. If this story has resonated with you, I invite you to join our growing community. Subscribe to our channel and become part of a family that seeks to inspire, uplift, and share the light of truth. Don't forget to like this video, Your support helps us reach even more hearts with messages of faith and hope. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, yet the fire that had been ignited in my soul burned as brightly as ever. Each day felt like a gift, an opportunity to live out the purpose that had been revealed to me. The world around me remained the same in many ways, the same struggles, the same joys, the same uncertainties, but my perspective had shifted. I saw with new eyes, not just the physical realities, but the spiritual truths that underpin them. Every encounter became a chance to share the light I had been given. Whether it was a kind word to a stranger, a heartfelt conversation with a friend, or a moment of prayer with someone in need, I approached each interaction with a sense of reverence. These were not mere coincidences, but divine appointments, orchestrated by a God who cared deeply for every soul. The message I carried was simple yet profound. There is hope, even in the darkest moments. There is a Savior who sees you, knows you, and loves you beyond measure. And there is a choice to walk in the light, to embrace truth, and to live with purpose and courage. It was a message born not from theory or hearsay, but from an encounter that had forever changed me. One evening, as I prepared to speak at a gathering in a nearby town, I felt a familiar presence wash over me. It was the same peace and assurance that I had felt in the celestial realm, a reminder that I was not walking this path alone. I stood before the crowd, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns, and shared my story once more. The words flowed freely, carrying with them the weight of truth and the hope of redemption. As I spoke, I could see the impact it had on the listeners. Some wept silently, their tears glistening in the dim light. Others sat with their eyes closed, as if in prayer or deep reflection. It was a humbling experience to witness the way God was moving in their hearts. And though I could not see the full extent of what was happening, I trusted that the seeds being planted would bear fruit in ways beyond my understanding. After the gathering, a young man approached me, his expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Do you really believe that God can change someone like me?" he asked, his voice trembling. I placed a hand on his shoulder and looked him in the eye. "Not only do I believe it," I said, "I know it. Because he changed me. And if he can do that for me, he can do it for anyone." The young man nodded, his eyes brimming with tears. We prayed together, and in that moment, I felt the weight of his burdens begin to lift. It was a reminder of why I had been given this mission, and of the power of sharing the hope that I had found. As the weeks went on, I continued to share my testimony, both in person and through other means. The responses varied. Some were deeply moved, others skeptical, and still others indifferent. But I pressed on, knowing that my task was not to convince or to convert, but to be faithful in sharing the truth. The rest was in God's hands. The journey was not without challenges. There were moments of doubt, of fatigue, and of feeling inadequate for the task. But in those moments, I would return to the memory of that radiant light, of Jesus' gaze, of the words that had been etched into my soul. They were a constant source of strength, a reminder that the mission was not mine alone, but his. As I conclude this chapter of my story, I want to leave you with a message of hope. No matter where you are in life, no matter what you have done or what burdens you carry, there is a Savior who loves you and stands ready to walk with you. All you need to do is reach out, to take that first step of faith, and trust that he will meet you where you are. If this journey has inspired you, I invite you to stay connected with our community. Subscribe to our channel and like this video to support this mission of sharing faith and hope with others. And if you're ready to take the next step, there's another video waiting for you, one that I believe will be truly revelatory for your life. Simply click on the video appearing on your screen and continue this journey with us. Together, let's discover the light that transforms lives.